Welcome, everyone, to the Jedi Playbook podcast. My name is Ron. I am here with Xavier, and in this episode, we are going to talk about spirituality and our lives in the context of Star Wars. Xavier, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Ron.
So, first things first, what were the circumstances in which you first saw Star Wars?
The first time I remember seeing Star Wars was when my mom took me and my entire family to go see Revenge of the Sith during its premiere.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a little kid, you know. I didn't quite understand that it was the greatest movie ever made at the time, but I'd say that was my introduction to, you know, as a old enough to remember getting into Star Wars and enjoying it, and remembering and sort of finding an interest for it of my own accord, you know, not just like somebody putting me onto it or anything like that.
Okay, that's important though, yeah, because if it was your own, if it was of your own accord, that's important. And
Hey, man, that's true. That's true. It's spirituality too, though. If you think about it, like, you know, a lot of people pick a faith because, oh, I grew up this, that, and the other, but it's like there's a difference between that and like, oh, this is lit. You know what I mean?
And speaking of faith, do you have a particular practice or religion that you adhere to?
Yes. So I'm Christian. I'm a Southern Baptist. Let me see. I I'm Southern Baptist mostly for the food and the music. I mainly just identify as Christian. I think that there are a bunch of different denominations that offer things that are super interesting. There are a bunch of different faiths as well that I find extraordinarily useful and interesting. For example, I'm also a Jedi and I'm also a Daoist. And I find that those things are compatible with my faith.
And what do you would you mind talking about what you do for a living?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in the U.S. Army National Guard, the Pennsylvania National Guard, and I am a chaplain candidate. So my job is to look out for the spiritual, mental, economic, as well, familial well-being of the troops. I'm basically the person where if something is going wrong and there's some sort of difficulty in your life, I'm supposed to be the first person that you're able to talk to. So technically, I'm a chaplain candidate. So I am the apprentice to the chaplain. The job that I just described is the chaplain. So, you know, that would be Qui-Gon and I'd be Obi-Wan in that sense.
That's a very good analogy.
Specifically within the Pennsylvania National Guard and the entire U.S. military, we are so short-staffed for chaplains that you see a lot of chaplain candidates functioning as chaplains. So not to toot my own horn here a little bit, but you know, I may not have the rank of master, but I'm definitely hitting like Anakin. I'll leave it like that.
I like that. So, wow, that's just I just need to process that for a second. That's why do you think that is though? Why do you think that there is it that just as the whole, just the younger generations have lost a sense of faith?
I think it's more than faith. So I think it's an aspect of faith as well as spirituality. And what I mean by that is I think that there are avenues where our modern sort of materialistic world thinks, oh, why do you need chaplains when you have, you know, therapists or psychologists or psychiatrists, or, you know, why do you need that anymore? And I'll tell you a story. I wasn't there, but my mentor talked to me about how on 9/11 they sent a bunch of military units to the area, and they were providing like free therapy, counselors and chaplains to the families, to the survivors and whatnot. And during that period of time, he told me everybody wanted to speak with the chaplain more than the therapist and more than the psychologist or the psychiatrist. And he said that's because while those other jobs that I just listed they were teaching coping mechanisms for like how to move forward, and this is how you put the pieces back together. The chaplain was offering hope. And I'm not saying that's like axiomatic. I'm not saying chaplains offer hope and therapists do not. That's not what I'm saying at all. However, in that specific situation, it seemed as though that's how it played out. And I think that applies to the modern era as well, as in people have lost the appreciation for a connection to something beyond the physical. I think that spirituality and faith is much like oxygen. You don't know that you need it so badly until you're running out of air, until your oxygen mask is running out of air. And then you start to realize what you're deprived of. Because privilege is invisible to those who have it, I think.
Do you think that it is a lack of spiritual experiences that has driven people more towards, say, psychology rather than to seek hope and comfort and stuff like that in spirituality?
That's a really good question. Is it a lack of spiritual
Like, for someone who has no
experience?
context for spirituality, they weren't raised religious, they didn't go to church, something like that. For me, I mean, I was raised Catholic, like my family's Italian, very, like, very strict Roman Catholic. Um, but Star Wars, just the faith from Star Wars, and like, Star Wars is my religion essentially, like more than Catholicism would have been at this point. So I'm just wondering if it's just people lack the context for spirituality also.
You know what? I think, yeah, I think they do lack the context for it in some regard because, and I don't want to misrepresent other faiths here, so I'm gonna take it from the disposition of my own Christian faith. Um, I think that when you have when you have a civilization, and I'm talking mostly about the West here, when you have a civilization that has that doesn't want for as much as people used to in the past. Like I would say that the modern average middle class person, maybe even lower class person, like I grew up in Brooklyn in the hood in Bedford Stuyvesant, and like even the lower class people there like live better than the kings of Babylon and Persia and Greece because we have penicillin and clean water. You know what I mean? And I think that when you get that, and I'm not saying that you need desperation to have faith, yet there's a lack of, and this is not to paint a wide brush with people, but I think that overall there's a lack of humility that comes as a trade-off of having privilege. You understand what I'm saying? Of just like having luxuries and things about you. You don't have the desperation where you're like, where you're praying like, God, please don't let my child die. And I'm not saying that people in the West don't have those experiences, but I think that outside of the West and in the past, those things were more common, and I would call those spiritual experiences. Like the desperation that might bring someone to pray, I would say that desperation and the answer to that prayer or the lack thereof, I would say that is a spiritual experience. But you're not even going to knock on that door if you know what I mean. If your problems are, oh, the Wi-Fi is not working, like give it a second to get back from space. Like that was
Yes.
a Louis C.K. joke. I don't want to take credit for that. I don't want to plagiarize, but
That no, but it's a very good point, and it's I think a lack of hardship and a lack of uh, there seems to be an aversion to discomfort that people I don't know, people don't like to go through. People don't like to be uncomfortable. People don't like to give up.
you know who didn't want to be uncomfortable? The Jedi Council didn't like to be uncomfortable, and I think that's part of the reason they fell, is because they fell into that same modern trap that I think we do. One of the things that I find really interesting about Star Wars, and I'm not sure if George Lucas did this on purpose, because I did some research and I found out that he is a Methodist Buddhist. So I'm not sure if I know he said it's supposed to rhyme like poetry. I don't know if he did this on purpose, but I find great similarity between the arrogance and blindness of the Jedi Council during their last days and like biblical last days. You know what I mean? Like right before the end times, or even right before the flood. You know what I mean? This whole idea of they're carrying on, they're partying, they're chilling. They don't see the Sith Lord right in front of their face. When Windu's like I sense the dark side around the Chancellor, and Yoda's like, oh well, I'm not gonna put two and two together. You know what I mean? Like there just seems to be this sense of blindness before the flood comes. And I think that there's a connection there. I'm not sure if Lucas did that on purpose, but I actually didn't think about it until just now. But I see a similarity there. What do you think about that?
Um, I really liked how Dooku put it. I haven't read the book in its entirety, but I've seen a lot of these little screenshots online of Dooku talking about Yoda's complacency, and there've been a few memes about it, and it definitely made me think. Aside from the fact that all of my fencing background makes me really love Makashi and Count Dooku's entire fighting style, and like him as a swordsman is just amazing, just as a character.
Yeah.
And then when you couple that with Christopher Lee, it's unbelievable. But look, Dooku was right about a lot of things, a great many things, and I think that it's that blindness and the complacency that, yes, you are correct. That is what led to the downfall of Jedi, but that is also where I think there's a little bit more hope moving forward for people like Luke and Ahsoka and people who have understood that outside confines and dogmatism of the council and the order, there's gray area.
Right. So there's, I want to see if I can put this into my own words to unpack it more. So there's like a phoenix-like capacity that the Jedi have when they actually hold to their values. Am I understanding what you're saying correctly?
The like
Yeah,
to be ultimately selfless.
Go
To be ultimately selfless
Right.
is what I think. Like, are you familiar with Dr. David Hawkins, the emotional scale? There's like this
No,
this
I'm not. I'm
levels of
not. Can you unpack that a
consciousness
little
that
bit?
he says. So he does it on the scale of 1,000. 1,000 is Jesus, and zero is so there's these different levels of emotion. It goes from like um, joy, peace, compassion, all that. It goes down into like courage, pride, and then once you get to 200, it's all like guilt, shame, anger, fear, the dark side stuff. And so
Right, right.
when you hit higher levels of consciousness, I believe that the Jedi way is the way to that. But that means also like letting go of all attachments and stuff like that. That's not conducive for day-to-day life for most people unless you plan on, becoming like a spiritual leader. So that's where I'm going with like let's find a little middle ground in that scale and try to attain enlightenment within reason, I guess is if that makes any sense. I don't know.
No, it does. It does. It does. I find this is part of the reason I became a Jedi is because I was finding that along my Christian walk, my Instagram is mostly like Bible verses and like some Star Wars quotes. And so I'd see some Bible verses about like I forget exactly where it is. Yeah, I don't want to misquote it, but it's something along the lines of Jesus says like one cannot be my disciple unless he forsakes all that he has and like lets go of everything, like relinquish the right to own everything. And then I'd keep scrolling, and the next thing would be Yoda saying like let train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. And I was like, yo, there's like something, there's a connection there between those two. And so I found that the path towards being and I want to emphasize, I think that a Jedi needs to be integrated. I think you do need a little bit of you need teeth, right? And I think that you need teeth because if you don't have the capacity to do damage, then you're not virtuous. You're a coward masquerading using your harmlessness to feign virtue, to say I'm a good person or whatnot. And I find that's actually that I found a biblical parallel for that too, because in the book of Matthew, maybe you remember this from your old Catholic upbringing. There's these things called the Beatitudes. Like the meek shall inherit the earth, the pure of heart. So you know what I'm talking about, like those kind of verses. And so in that passage, specifically the meek shall inherit the earth. The translation for the word meek in Greek in that context is the word praus. I don't remember if you and I talked about this, but the word praus literally translates to somebody who has a sword but has the discipline to keep their sword sheathed. So the command isn't to just walk around like, oh, namaste, I'm harmless and I'm nice and I'm good, because what are you going to do when a Sith Lord shows up? You're going to get your butt whooped, right? But if you have a sword and you have the discipline to keep it sheathed, then you can take down the Sith Lord without falling to the dark side. You can be an inferior Jedi and use a form like Form 3, like Obi-Wan, and take down Anakin, because Anakin's not just fighting you, he's fighting himself. You know what I mean? Sorry, I just went on a complete tangent there.
That is
But
no, that's spectacular, and that's a point that if I have not made in my post previously, I would like to make it. It's that there is a difference between being nice and being kind, because nice guy is harmless, but if you can do damage and you are kind, there's strength and nobility and in restraint. So we're on the same page there.
there's this quote by Jordan. There's this quote by Jordan Peterson that I find so interesting. I don't remember which one of his books he wrote in, but he said something. I'm going to paraphrase something along the lines of, "If you think that a strong man is dangerous, watch what a weak man will do." And I find that so interesting because I think that the Jedi who hasn't mastered the part of them that goes all the way to hell, like that hasn't stared that part of them in the face and likes to pretend like it's not there, just like they pretended the Sith Lord wasn't there. They were doing it within their own minds just as much as they were doing it within the galaxy. I think that the person who refuses to stare that part of themselves in the face and tame it, like you're gonna fall to the dark side immediately, like just like Luke did in the cave on Dagobah. Just like, and I'm not a huge fan of the sequel trilogy, but Rey as well. I'm pretty sure she fell to the dark side like that because neither one of them were integrated at that point.
the the cave, the trial spirit, as we call it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it's just facing the darkest part of yourself. That is,
Evil.
it's tough. That is, and it's something no one ever wants to do, and no one wants to acknowledge. And I find that perplexing when it's just such an integral part. Um,
Well, yeah, but not. I agree with you. Yet one of the things that the pastors who have been mentoring me have been, because I consider myself very much the spiritual warfare arm of the Christian church. Like you and I have had conversations about this where I run into spirits a lot. Like on the military bases that I work at, there have been clocks thrown across the room, trays scattered across the floor, and stuff like that. And so I'm very much like focused on that kind of thing. So I get frustrated. This is one of my pet peeves is I'll get frustrated when I find other people who I think should be thinking like this or paying attention to these kinds of things. I'm like, why aren't you paying attention to this? And my mentors and pastors will have to remind me that, like and this is within the context of my own faith, but within the body of Christ, like there's the arm, there's the legs, there's the eyes, there's the ears. To maybe a easier analogy that people would understand is if you're playing an MMORPG and you're playing on a team, you got your healers, you got your tanks, you got your DPS, and it's easier for people like you and me. And I don't want to project onto you or anything like that, but I would consider myself more of like a DPS kind of guy. So for me to go on a quest into the cave of evil, like I'm pretty comfortable doing that. But our healers and our tanks, whether you're a Jedi or whatever you believe in, like it's harder for the healers to have maybe courage isn't the right word because I don't want to say they aren't courageous, but it's not so much playing to their strengths for them to go into the cave of evil sometimes. Does that make sense? So that's I don't want to. So I want to push back on that a little bit and say that I agree with you 100%. Yet I can see why it's hard for some people to find it as necessary to do that as you and I do. Because let's be real, a lot of people are learning about this right now. A lot of people are learning about this from people like you and me. I've learned a lot about this kind of stuff from you. You're the first person, you know what I mean? Like you're paving a new road here with what you're doing. So
I I forgive my slight. I'm slightly incredulous about that, but I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Um, and so, taking that into account, it's like I do feel like we do have a duty to kind of, help people and help contextualize it. And if you so here's where I want to, where we may differ. If you had to pick a path in terms of like an area to devote your study, if you were to be a guardian, a consular, or a sentinel, what would be your like profession within the order?
um, I forget the name of the exact one. Maybe you'll remember, but I know that there is one that mainly functioned as a spy.
The sentinel.
Not that would be the Sentinel. Not
Yes.
always necessarily needing to draw the lightsaber. Yet I find that there's a quote by I think it's General. Patton? No. It's Eisenhower. Yeah, it's Eisenhower, and he said that planning is indispensable, but no plans are useful on. No. Sorry, let me get it right. No plan is useful on the battlefield, or plans are useless on the battlefield, but planning is
It's
indispensable.
indispensable.
You know what I
Yes,
mean? Like
yes, yes.
no plan survives contact with the enemy. Yet I think that gathering intel and I'm going to use a Naruto term here because I can't think of a really. Actually, there's a Star Wars term, Dunmok. I think you and I talked about this a little bit. When Dunmok is for those listeners who are unfamiliar, Dunmok is it's sort of like in Naruto, like a genjutsu. It's not necessarily a physical attack. It is an attack on your enemy meant to get into their mind. So, for example, when Palpatine is fighting Yoda in Episode 3, and Palpatine is cackling and he's laughing, the dude looks like he's having a blast. You know what I mean? He's taunting Yoda. He's insulting him. He's trying to get in Yoda's head. That's actually a Sith tactic. It has a name. It's called Dunmok. There's not a name for it on the light side. I've just started calling it reverse Dunmok because there's not an actual Jedi term for it. But whenever Luke was in a room with Vader, he's only in a room with Vader for maybe like 15 minutes total throughout those 3 movies. And the whole time he's in the room with Vader, he's like, there's good in you. I know there's good in you. Like, please turn back. The whole time he's talking to him. And it's like the same version. And it worked because when you get to Episode 6 and Luke is still keeping at it, he's like, please, Father, I know there's still good in you. And Vader says, like, it's too late for me, son. Like, you can tell he's saying it to try to convince him. Like, go back and listen to when he says. For those of you who are listening to this, go back and listen to when Vader is talking to Luke right on Endor, and he says to him, "It's too late for me, son." He's trying to convince himself.
He says it so slow too.
Luke's is working on him. Sorry, I'm gonna pass it back to you in a second. But I think that this is actually there's this Christian or biblical precedent where it's like bless those who curse you. Right? It's like love your enemies. Like and it's so hard, but it's like blessings, and I think this is true in Star Wars and in Christianity because Luke proved it. Blessings are more powerful than curses. You know what I mean? I think that blessings are more powerful than curses. I think that, and I'm not saying, like run up to somebody who's trying to hurt you and just put your arms out because you got to, like I said, you got to be meek. You got to be proud about it. But there are certain circumstances where it's like Luke, and sorry, give me 1 second. I'm almost done here. I'm on a roll. I'm feeling.
You're good.
I'm cooking here. When Luke and Vader are fighting, Palpatine doesn't give a crap who wins. He just wants them to fight. The reason that fight ended was because Luke sheathed his sword. He sheathed his sword and he cast it to the side because he said, "I would rather die than murder my father." And I think that's a very biblical thing. I would rather take up my cross and die for my ideals than fall to sin archetypically. You understand what I'm saying? And that it's like in Christianity where it's like that's what broke the yoke of sin. It's like that's what freed the galaxy from Palpatine, who's an archetypal Satan. George Lucas had to do this on purpose. I feel like he had to know something about what he was doing when he wrote this.
I heard that he had a near-death experience in his late teens or early 20s, and when he came out of that, that's when he kind of had the idea for Star Wars, and that's when he started working on it, which is crazy. That is a really, really good point about Luke and Vader and him trying to convince himself. What the thing that speaks to me there is there a light side equivalent? And my mind immediately went to, is the Jedi mind trick not just the benevolent side of that manipulation whenever it's used, right? The first time chronologically we see it would be Attack of the Clone in the bar, the death stick dealer, Obi-Wan. You want to go home and rethink your life. Like, he's not telling him to go kill himself. He's telling him to go home and stop dealing death sticks and get his life in order. Like, that's benevolent. There's a certain.
So I actually did. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I want you to finish.
No. That was it.
So I disagree with you here.
Oh.
And I think that this is. I want to tie this to why God put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the thing, like why he put the temptation in the garden and then told Adam and Eve not to bite it. Because if he didn't put it there, he wouldn't have some people who are capable of actually loving him. When he would have iPhones where I could press a button and say, "Hey Siri, tell me you love me," and Siri has to say, "I love you." But that's not real because Siri didn't have the opportunity to rebuke me, to reject me. And so that's why I think that what Luke is doing with Vader is different from the Jedi mind trick, because the Jedi mind trick isn't appealing to the free will of the person to, of their own volition, come and join you in the light. It's not like it's not like a, you know, David or Jesus going out for the lost sheep, for the lost 99, because that's what I think Anakin is, really. I think he's an archetypal representation of the lost sheep that wandered from the pack, and the light side went back to go and save him, right? But I think that's very different from the Jedi mind trick, because I actually think the Jedi mind trick is just raw overpowering the will of the person, and that's why I think it's different. I'm not actually sure if it even would coincide with the will of the living force. I'm not sure. What do you think about that? Do you think that would be in opposition to the will of the living force? Is it a pass? Like,
I think it depends on the motives of the individual, because Qui-Gon, I think, embodied the will of the living force more than almost any other Jedi in the trilogy, I can say. You know, I think we would agree on that. He tries to use the mind trick, right? So I don't think it's against the will of the living force, but I do think, and Obi-Wan puts it in A New Hope right before they're going into the cantina, it's the force can have a strong, what is it? The force can have a strong influence on the weak-minded, right? So it's only people who really can't think for themselves. Okay, you're good. You're going to assert your will so that they can sort themselves out, maybe. Or you're going to do something to further the cause of the light side.
I agree with you. Okay. You actually changed my mind on this a little. Yeah, you changed my mind on this one, because you're making me think about frame, the idea of frame. Like, I don't know if you've heard this before, but if you're in the wild and you see an 800-pound gorilla and the 800-pound gorilla charges at you, if you stand firm, not tense, but if you stand firm, confident, but like also relaxed, the gorilla will back off. It won't charge you. But if you so much as flinch, it will rip you limb from limb from limb. And I think that this also applies, like if you're walking down, you know, the street, like, and you see someone, like either it's a police officer or just somebody who's carrying a gun or something like that, like you're immediately sucked into a frame there where it's like, okay, like I'm going, even if you're not thinking about it, subconsciously you're like, okay, I'm going to conduct myself in a way where it's like, I see danger, I'm going to like step aside and acquiesce in a sense to that frame. So I think that if you were just strong in the force, you know what I mean? And that is a tool that you have in your bag, and you can project strong frame with the force, then yeah, I'd say that if anything, it's an example of being meek. So yeah, you changed my mind on that one. I like that.
I'm glad to have. We have. It's been going on now almost. It's 30 minutes. Wow. I swear to God, it feels like 10.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it really does. It feels like yeah. That's great.
I am going to stop the recording, but I do want to talk to you for a little bit afterwards. So it has been a pleasure.
Sure.
We will definitely do another one of these, but I do want to cap them at 30.
Hey, before you end it,
yes.
Can I do a quick little plug?
Please.
So if anybody here is interested in joining the United States military, specifically the PA National Guard, because we're the best, I'm going to give you, would you be able to plug my Facebook or my Instagram?
Sure.
And would you be able to tag me so that they can reach me? I don't want to give them my number, but yeah, definitely. Give me a shout, give me a holler, and I can help work that out for you. I can help you get some school money, some free college, and some the best version of yourself. I can help you out with that.
Xavier, thank you very much for your service. Thank you for your time, and it has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for being worth it, man. Thanks for paying your taxes. You pay me.